Imagine for a second that you are completely helpless. Like you are backed into a corner and there's a lion charging right at you.
Oh boy, that is a terrifying thought.
Right. And you don't have a weapon. You don't have any kind of escape route at all.
Just total panic.
Exactly. But all you have in your hand is a tiny, seemingly useless, dry stick.
A dry stick against a lion.
Yeah. And according to the incredible story we are jumping into for today's deep dive, that fragile little piece of wood might actually be the absolute only thing you need to survive.
It's just a completely counterintuitive idea, isn't it? I mean, we are so conditioned to believe that, surviving a massive threat requires an equally massive show of force.
Definitely. You think you need a bazooka or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the wisdom we are exploring today, it just flips that entire concept completely upside down.
It really does. And that is exactly our mission for you today. We are pulling from the world of a story set in Kandundu village, specifically focusing on the events surrounding a young woman named Sarah.
Right. Sarah's journey is it's remarkable.
It is. Through her story and through the profound mentorship of this unforgettable woman named Mrs Kiandandu, we are going to unpack the core mechanics of personal strength.
And we'll get into the really heavy reality of marriage, too.
Yes, and how you, the listener, can navigate your own soul-crushing heartbreaks. We want to distill this hard-won wisdom from Mrs. Kiandandu into practical takeaways that you can actually use to build your own resilient future.
Which I think is so needed right now.
I agree. So, okay, let's unpack this. But, Sarah's joyful wedding day, which is sort of the climax of this whole story, it didn't just happen in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
Right. To really understand her triumph at the altar, you have to first understand the heartbreak she survived. And actually, the heartbreak her entire village had to survive to get there.
You really do. Because if you look at Kandundu village as a whole, it serves as this perfect macro-level example of the very personal healing that Sarah herself goes through.
Yeah. Set the scene for us there. What's going on in Kandundu?
Well, the village is currently 2 years into a massive youth rehabilitation program. And what's fascinating here is how they are actually achieving this transformation.
Because it's not what you'd expect.
No, they aren't just like lecturing people or handing out money. They're fundamentally rewiring the community's approach to shame and homelessness.
They are attacking the actual mechanism of despair itself.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So, take the pregnant schoolgirls in the village, for example.
Okay.
In a lot of environments, the immediate societal reaction is just total ostracization. The girls are shunned.
Right. The babies become these symbols of derailed futures, basically.
Exactly. And then this generational cycle of poverty just locks right in. But in Kandundu, the program intercepts that shame. They step in with intensive counseling.
So they don't hide them away?
No. They provide so much support that the babies are actively reframed by the community as blessings and hope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're literally breaking the psychological loop of worthlessness.
And they do the exact same thing for the young people who are lost to alcoholism and drugs, don't they?
They do. It's the same playbook.
Because they don't just tell them to sober up. That never works anyway. They replace that void of addiction with the tangible power of creation.
Yes. The creation aspect is huge.
They teach them cake baking, they teach them soap making and beadwork. I mean, they are transforming these kids from consumers of despair into producers of actual value.
That's a great way to put it.
The text beautifully describes them moving from being robbers of life to keepers of life.
And that shift, from a robber of life to a keeper of life, that is really the psychological spine of everything we are discussing today in this deep dive.
I love that. Keepers of life.
Right. Because when a young mother learns to make soap and starts a small enterprise, she isn't just making a cleaning product. She is manufacturing agency.
Oh, that's powerful.
She is proving to herself that she has the power to alter her own environment.
Which brings us perfectly to Sarah's personal story. Because Sarah had to manufacture her own agency after a betrayal that, honestly, it left my jaw on the floor.
Oh, the Obadiah situation. It's rough.
It is so rough. So before she ever reconnected with her childhood friend, Sammy, who is the good, steady doctor she's preparing to marry, in the present day, she had this college boyfriend named Obadiah.
Right.
And Obadiah promised her heaven. They were planning an entire life together. But right after graduation, she tries to call him, and he is just completely unreachable.
The panic that must have set in.
Oh, absolute dread. So she actually goes to his parents' house the very next day, and she discovers that he didn't just leave her, he secretly moved to America.
Packed up and vanished.
Yes. And to avoid dealing with the breakup, he lied to his own parents. He literally told them Sarah had flown to America the day before and that they were reuniting over there.
It is just a staggering level of cowardice. I mean, he constructed an entire alternate reality just to escape basic accountability.
It really is the ultimate catastrophic modern ghosting experience. He warped reality to avoid a difficult conversation.
He really did.
So wait, I have to ask you about this. Sarah eventually cuts off this toxic ex, and the village is cutting out this generational despair. Are they basically using the exact same playbook here?
They absolutely are. It's the exact same underlying psychology. Because both Sarah and the broader community made a conscious decision, they refused to let pain dictate their future.
They wouldn't let the pain win.
Right. When Obadiah's mother is trying to comfort Sarah after the truth comes out, Sarah has this sudden realization. She doesn't spiral into trying to fix him.
Or trying to prove her worth to a guy who fled the continent.
Exactly. She draws a really firm emotional boundary. She accepts that they just weren't meant to be, and she begins the hard work of moving on.
So the skill building and the boundary setting are connected.
Yes. Whether it's a village using beadwork to fight addiction, or a young woman using emotional boundaries to survive betrayal, the mechanism is identical. They are reclaiming power from the robbers of life.
And that reclaiming of power, it culminates in the absolute joy of her wedding day. I mean, the village is buzzing, the girls are getting their makeup done, the women are chatting and laughing. It's a picture of total triumph.
It's a beautiful scene. Sarah is finally looking at a bright future with Sammy.
But then on the Saturday morning of the wedding, the phone rings.
Yeah, everything stops. Sarah picks it up, and it's James.
And James is the firstborn son of her mentor, Mrs Kiandandu.
Right. And immediately, the emotional gravity of the entire story just shifts. James tells her that his mother, a woman who is universally adored by the community for her angelic character and deep wisdom, she passed away peacefully in her sleep that very morning.
On the morning of the wedding. That is so heavy.
He even tries to comfort Sarah, telling her his mother died happy.
And Sarah makes this incredible choice in that moment. She decides to carry this heavy secret entirely alone so she doesn't ruin the joy of the bridal party around her.
Which is a testament to her strength right there.
Absolutely. But internally, her mind instantly flashes back to the previous Sunday, to her final bedside visit with Mrs Kiandandu.
And that flashback, that contains the heavy anchoring philosophy of this entire deep dive.
Let's get into that. What does she tell her?
Well, Mrs Kiandandu knew her time was short, so she focused all of her fading energy on preparing Sarah for the reality of the vows she was about to take.
Right.
She warned Sarah that marriage is not a temporary arrangement. It's not like enrolling in a school where you know your exact graduation date. She defines marriage as a permanent rite of passage.
She says it carries the same inevitable weight as birth or death.
Exactly.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this a bit because I can hear the listener bristling at this idea right now.
Fair enough. Let's hear it.
Mrs Kiandandu says, quote, "That is why people swear it is only death that will make them part." But isn't that a terrifyingly heavy burden to place on young people today?
It sounds incredibly daunting, yes.
Especially if you find yourself in a deeply toxic, manipulative, or even abusive situation. Are we really supposed to tell people, just stick it out and suffer simply because you made a vow at an altar?
That is a crucial question. And honestly, it's actually the exact same pushback Sarah offers in that moment.
Oh, she asks her about it.
Yeah, Sarah asks her point blank if she is saying people should never, ever divorce. But Mrs Kiandandu immediately clarifies.
What does she say?
She says no. There are situations when divorce is absolutely inevitable. She is emphatically not advocating for staying in abuse or violence.
Okay, that is a very important distinction. So what is she actually critiquing then?
Her real critique is aimed at the mechanism of what she calls reckless living.
Reckless living. How does she define that?
Reckless living is the erosion of mutual care. She is grieving this modern trend where spouses operate as completely independent, selfish agents while living under the exact same roof.
Ah, I see.
She talks about husbands and wives engaging in dangerous, selfish behaviors, leaving their homes completely exposed.
And that affects the next generation.
Definitely. She asks Sarah this chilling question. She says, what role models are we becoming to our children? Will they distinguish evil from good in the future?
Wow. So she's really talking about the destruction of the family ecosystem.
Exactly. When she equates marriage to birth and death, she is talking about the intention you bring to it. She is telling you, the listener, to enter a partnership not as a consumer looking for an easy ride, but as a change maker.
A change maker, that's a huge mindset shift.
It is. She tells Sarah that joy in marriage isn't found in a total lack of conflict. Joy is the act of winning a tough battle together.
Wow.
You will feel like you can't go another mile, but because you're anchored in mutual care, you'll go 1,000 miles.
Your joy is in winning a battle. That is a radically different framework than what we usually see. And what gives this advice so much weight is that Mrs. Kiandandu isn't speaking from some sheltered, privileged ivory tower.
Not even close.
Her definition of winning a battle is born from unimaginable suffering. I mean, we're talking about a woman who has been a widow for 10 years. She is actively dying of cancer and AIDS.
And yet, look at her perspective.
Right. She looks at Sarah and asks, "Did God deny me life?" And her answer is no. She says she is dying happy because she has breathed life into the world.
While perfectly healthy people who treated their vows recklessly might be living in bitter regret.
She completely dismantles our conventional definition of strength.
She really does. And to understand the depth of her resilience, you have to look at the source of her pain.
Her late husband.
Right. Her late husband wasn't just a flawed man. He was a revered community pastor. The village trusted him implicitly. They essentially treated him like God.
That is so dangerous.
It is. And even when his evil ways became apparent to people, the community was so terrified of losing their spiritual anchor that they just kept quiet.
They protected him.
They listened to his sermons and protected him, while the law proved totally futile against him.
His pride swelled until he finally crashed, leaving the entire community with these deep, lasting scars. And this is where Mrs. Kiandandu delivers a warning that every single person listening needs to write down.
It's a critical warning.
Because she survived this profound spiritual betrayal, she warns that the robbers of life rarely show up looking like obvious villains.
No, they disguise themselves as the very solutions to our problems.
Exactly. Because we are desperate, we project divinity onto flawed humans. We follow them willingly right off a cliff.
It is a brilliant observation about human psychology because, desperation breeds gullibility. When we are drowning, we don't inspect the life raft. We just cling to it.
We just want the pain to stop.
Right. And if that life raft is a charismatic leader or a toxic partner or even just a comforting illusion, we hand over all our power to it.
Which perfectly sets up the most mind-blowing metaphor of the entire story. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
I love this part.
Mrs. Kiandandu tells Sarah that true strength isn't having the power to stand up and walk away from a massive threat. True strength is when you are physically or emotionally paralyzed.
You're backed into a corner.
You are backed into a corner waiting for a lion to charge and tear you apart. But then, with the simplicity of a dry stick, you hit it hard on the head and kill it.
A dry stick.
She says true strength is crippling fear with the good little and useless things we have hidden within us.
When you really unpack the psychology of that dry stick, it shifts everything.
How so? Break that down for us.
Well, when we face massive threats, say a terrifying health diagnosis, an abusive boss, or a complete financial collapse, our brain panics because we think we need an equally massive weapon to fight back.
Right. We think we need $1 million or perfect emotional regulation or overwhelming physical power to fix it.
Exactly. But Mrs. Kiandandu is saying that resilience doesn't require a sword.
It's almost like emotional jujitsu.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
You aren't trying to match the lion's raw strength and momentum. You are using a tiny fulcrum, the dry stick, to leverage all that terrifying momentum against the lion itself.
Yes.
It's like a circuit breaker in a house. It's just a tiny, seemingly useless piece of plastic. But when a massive, destructive surge of electricity comes through, that tiny switch flips and neutralizes the whole thing.
That is exactly how it works in practice. The dry stick is the micro-action.
Give me some examples of that.
It's the single deep breath you take before responding to an angry email. It's the quiet, firm boundary you set with a manipulative relative.
Or the soap making in the village.
Right. It's the choice a teenager in Kandundu village makes to bake a cake instead of taking a drug.
Those things seem so insignificant.
Useless, even, compared to the lions we face. But when applied with unwavering faith, those micro-actions cripple fear. They prove to your brain that you still have agency.
And she makes it very clear that this agency has to come from within. After watching her community blindly follow her corrupt husband, she tells Sarah not to look for salvation in fallible human institutions. You have to find that anchor internally.
because that internal anchor is what allows you to hold your ground. When nowhere outside feels safe, your internal resolve, your ability to wield that dry stick, becomes your sanctuary.
And the impact of that internal sanctuary is visually stunning in the final moments of the story.
The contrast is amazing.
It really is. The narrative takes us from the quiet, heavy atmosphere of Mrs. Kiandandu's deathbed straight into the dazzling, triumphant light of Sarah's wedding,
Right. The ceremony is happening at the Kandundu church.
which has undergone its own massive resurrection. It's no longer the dark domain of the corrupt pastor. It's totally modernized.
They've really revitalized the whole space.
It has new pews, tiled floors, cooling fans, and this high-voltage sound system. And the new officiant, Pastor Moriyama, is so good, he's actually been promoted to a senior bishop in the capital. And as Sarah walks out of her home, the women spread these vibrant, colorful laços, traditional fabrics on the ground, so her gown doesn't even touch the dirt.
It is just a phenomenal external display of the internal healing we've been discussing. The community has actively purged the robbers of life.
Yeah, the church itself is structurally and spiritually renewed.
And the village is celebrating its own survival through Sarah's joy.
But, just a week after those colorful fabrics are laid on the ground, the story takes us back to the dirt, to a graveyard.
Yeah, the emotional whiplash of that transition is real.
Mrs. Kiandandu is laid to rest. And the detail here is something I honestly haven't been able to stop thinking about.
It's the grave she's buried next to, right?
Yes, she is buried right next to the flowery grave of her husband. And we find out that while she was alive, even when she was dying of AIDS and confined to a wheelchair, she had herself driven to his grave.
She went out of her way to go there.
She faithfully watered the flowers on the grave of the man who caused her and her village so much agony. She watered them so consistently that they bloomed beautifully all year round, totally defying the dry seasons.
It's a jarring image, to be honest. Why would someone spend their final painful days cultivating beauty on the grave of their abuser?
Exactly. I mean, I try to think about the listener applying this. If you have a terrible, toxic ex or a boss who stole your career opportunities, the modern instinct is to salt the earth.
Oh, absolutely. We want them to suffer.
Right. We want revenge. But here's a woman watering the grave of a man who left a legacy of scars. What is the actual mechanism at play here? Why do that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism is radical self-preservation.
Self-preservation by watering his grave.
Yes. Mrs. Kiandandu didn't water that grave to validate his evil. She didn't do it to excuse his pride or minimize the incredible damage she did to the village. She watered that grave to maintain her own internal garden of grace.
Wow. Her own internal garden.
Think about it. If she had allowed that grave to become a neglected, barren patch of dirt, it would have been a daily, physical manifestation of her bitterness.
It would have proven that he ruined her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By tending to it, she was exercising her dry stick. The physical act of watering those flowers was a ritual to enforce her own peace. She was actively refusing to let his legacy of destruction turn the soil of her own soul barren.
That makes so much sense. It's like, you know when people obsessively check a toxic ex's social media hoping to see them fail?
Oh yeah, doom scrolling.
You think you are punishing them, but you are actually just drinking poison and hoping the other person dies.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Mrs. Kiandandu refused to drink the poison.
Yeah.
She watered the grave so she could stay a keeper of life right up until her final breath.
And the enduring proof of her success is what the village does next. On her grave, they don't just plant flowers, they plant a fig tree.
A fig tree. The roots and the fruit.
Exactly. The story specifically notes that the fig tree is planted as a remembrance of her strength. As it grows, it will provide shade, its fruits will be eaten, and her story will be told to the generations resting under its branches.
That is beautiful.
If you look at the entire narrative, Sarah represents the fruit. Sarah is the new generation who took the hard lessons, surviving the ghosting, setting boundaries, understanding the gravity of vows, and walked into a bright future.
But Mrs. Kiandandu is the root system.
She anchored them. She anchored an entire village from a wheelchair. The fig tree is the perfect symbol of how one individual's quiet, steadfast influence can foster lasting, tangible change in a community.
She didn't need to be a powerful politician or a wealthy donor to change Kandundu.
No, she just needed her dry stick.
That is incredibly powerful. And as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring all of this out of Kandundu village and right into the room with you, listening right now.
Yeah, how does this apply to you?
We've journeyed through the mechanics of healing, how replacing shame with practical action reclaims agency. We've watched Sarah survive a reality-warping betrayal by refusing to let someone else's cowardice define her worth.
And we've sat by the bedside of a dying mentor who understood that true power isn't about matching the lion's strength.
Right. It's about using the small, seemingly useless tools within you to cripple fear.
This story is a testament to your own agency. You don't have to follow leaders or partners who disguise themselves as solutions just because you feel desperate.
You have a choice.
You do. You have the ability to question, to set boundaries, and to trust the quiet internal anchor of your own resilience.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Mrs. Kiandandu warned that the robbers of life often disguise themselves as the very solutions to our desperation.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is. Take a look around your own life today. Are you outsourcing your power to a comfortable illusion? Are you waiting for a massive weapon to fight your battles while ignoring the dry stick sitting right in your hand?
That's the real question.
And most importantly, what kind of seed are you planting right now that will grow into a fig tree for someone else tomorrow?
Like, listen, and subscribe.